There we go. This would be Wednesday, May 27th, fourth period, as we continue and get farther into it. I apologize for not getting far enough with it. Mentally, I have to go back through a little bit of the story because I have to get my brain going along it as quickly as possible. And I'm going to try and hopefully get through my second story, or I'm sorry, the last story, but the second one takes a little bit because it's sort of the biggest one that we're in right now. All right. So I went back through the story, and we got the fact that I was an idiot and I stole right in front of the people with the big glass wall.
Right.
Yeah. So we got that part. So I'm sitting back there, and the cop has not arrived yet, but I'm trying hard not to cry. And like the tough little white boy I was reciting NWA and thinking about the prophets, Dr. Dre and Ice Cube, as they were telling me that I should not be polite to the police. And so that was what I was going through in my head. That was my spot when I was getting ready to yell at Jamie and Raridan, who are at the desk, who have to wait until she's done before I come over there and beat you with a stick.
Okay, have fun.
Don't you throw your hands in the air at me. And so I was doing my best to stay strong, which was not easy. So I was repeating the poem from my English class over and over again in my head. And then I was thinking about the fact that when the police showed up, that I was not going to give them my name, because that's what Ice Cube told me to do. And the fact that I was willing to go to jail. And then I realized that that's probably stupid, because I'm not in Compton, I'm in Noblesville, and I'm just a silly little white boy. But that was stuff going through my head. And then I looked to my right, and about as far away as the doors are there was the back wall of the whole place, and there was an exit door. It just said exit in big letters, and it said alarm will sound if you push it. And I realized if I pushed that door and ran, they wouldn't be able to catch me in time, and I'd be gone before they had a chance to get to me. And I really considered doing that. And I'd like to tell you it was my moral strength of character that kept me from doing it, but it wasn't. It was the fact that I realized that if I did that, and they did have me on video, that they would just take that video over to the high school and show it to the people in the office, and they would identify me there, and then they would bring the police to my classroom, and then I would be arrested in front of everyone in a classroom. And it was much better to be right here. But if they didn't have a video, if that guy hadn't said that he had me on video, I don't know if I would have run or not and made it even stupider than it already was. But as is, I did not run. I stayed there. And I don't know how much time went by before eventually the cop showed up. And I remember he was a big guy, older, and he came to the doors, the little swinging doors, stepped in. I think the pharmacist was with him. I don't remember for sure. I know that he reached over and picked up the evidence, the spray, the Banaka bottle, and then the packaging that had torn apart. He put that into his pocket, and he asked where I was, and he pointed over to me, and I remember saying, "Oh, so that's the thief." And that's all he called me, like the rest of the time that I was with him. He always just called me the thief. And so he came over to where I was, and he was like, "Stand up, thief." And I stood up, and I remember he didn't frisk me, probably because I was so skinny you could have seen a gun on me. But I do remember he put handcuffs on me, and it was incredibly uncomfortable. If you've never had to wear handcuffs from an angry policeman, they are not pleasant. They pinch your skin, and they are very cold and very hard, and I did not like it. And not in front of me. He did it behind my back. And then he led me back to the store. When he did, he grabbed my arm and lifted me up on that side. And so as he took me through the store, I remember I had to walk through the place like this, and he lifted me up, so I was like on my tiptoes almost. And I remember going through the store, and one of the things I remember walking through the store was looking to my left in this direction and seeing a mom and her daughter, and the mom looking up and seeing me in handcuffs, and the policeman walking me through the store, and the mom taking the daughter and moving her behind the mom. So like the mom was protecting the daughter from me, like I was the kind of person that you had to protect children from. And ironically, I'm a teacher. But at the time, it was, there's no amount of words that can put how crushing it is to realize you're the kind of person that mothers feared for their children. The fact that I was that scummy of a kid. And so it hurt a lot. And then I remember going through the rest of the store and passing the checkout lady and then going through the double doors again. And then I remember as we got to the second door, the cop was opening it. Through my head, it was like, I remember the last time I was here, and I was free, and I had not been arrested, and everything was in front of me, and life was happy. And I'm here right now because of a choice I made. And I remember how sickening it felt to go through that. And then we walked through the door and went to a cop car, which was like parked right at the curb. The lights were on, but not the woo-woo siren thing, so just the lights were going around. I remember looking down to the right, and the length of the building, and heads popping out around the edge of the building. And it was my friends who were watching me get arrested, because that's what friends do. They watch you get arrested when you're an idiot. And it looked like a little totem pole of little heads all popped around the side of it. And I remember the cop looking over there and seeing them and laughing. I was like, oh, you got a fan club. More hooligans like you, more criminals like you. I remember just thinking like, you're a jerk. And then he put me into the front seat of the cop car. And so my friends watched me get put into the front seat. I remember getting into the front seat. There was a shotgun bolted to the dashboard on the passenger side. So when I got in, it was right there, and I had to move my head around it when I sat down. And then I couldn't do the seatbelt because my hands were handcuffed behind me. And so I had to lean back, and then he had to lean in and do the seatbelt for me. And I remember as he put the seatbelt on me, what the cop said, and it was just a small thing, but it hit me. He was like, thief, while you're in my car, try not to steal anything. And then he shut the door. I was just like, oh, that sucks. And then he came around and got in the car. I remember driving over to the police station. And Noblesville's not very big. I mean, the town's not very big. It was like a 2-minute drive from where the high school was over to the police station. I don't remember the drive. I don't remember going through the police station. I remember sitting in the policeman's office. It was like a little cubicle area where it was like off in a little side room. I mean, his whole office was like the size of my little desk area. I mean, like that outer area was walls. It was just enough room inside for like a desk, my chair on the other side of it, and like that was it. And I was in there, and there was like posters all over the wall, like, I don't know, policey stuff. I remember sitting there, and at some point he took off my handcuffs, but I don't remember that. I remember him calling my mom, and that being a horrible conversation. And him like, yep, we have your son at the police station. It's like, no, ma'am, he's not hurt. He was under arrest. He was shoplifting. I'm like, yes, your son. And like went through my name and all that. And just been like, oh, that's horrible. I could not imagine what mom was going through. And then she had to come get me. And I remember another memory I have is while sitting in this chair, the cops on the other side of the desk entering in, like whatever on the file, this kid is a criminal, into the little file thing. And I'm sitting there looking around the room, still trying hard not to cry, and trying to distract myself. And one wall was wanted posters, like you see it like the post office, stuff like that, like all these different criminals and wanted posters and stuff like that. And I remember looking over at it, just looking at all the different things on there, and the cop looks up and sees me looking at it. And so he said to me, you see family up there? Is that going to be your future? Is that you're going to be a criminal? I was really like, oh, it was just like that kick in the gut. And I came back with something witty like, no. And then just sat there and like didn't look anywhere else. I was like stared down at the ground the entire time until my mom showed up. And when my mom showing up, and she didn't yell at me. My parents weren't yellers for the most part. It was worse than that. She was disappointed. And it was that whole, when she came in, that she gave me a hug because I was all right. And then it was how disappointed she was in me. She was like, do you understand that you're a child that we love and trusted, and now you're just a child that we love, because you're not the child that I raised, because the child I raised doesn't do this. And it was just those little things like that. It was just it stabbed me. And it was like, yelling's better. Yelling's so much better. But no, it was awful. And it hurts now to think about it. And I remember being in the car. And we had a gray Pontiac Bonneville, and I sat in the front seat driving home. And my mom drove, and she didn't really talk to me the entire drive. I remember sitting in the front seat with my feet up on the dashboard, and I had my arms around my legs, and my head pushed against, it was a cold, because it was late October, and I remember the cold window against my face, and just my face pushed up against it, and just staring out the window as we drove. And I still remember the thoughts going through my head of the fact that I did this to myself, the fact that I ruined my life. That what's happening to me now is because of decisions and choices that I made. And then the other big part of it was, what's going to happen to me going forward? What are my friends going to think? Because now I'm the kid with a criminal record. So what's going to happen when I talk to them? What's going to happen at school? What's going to happen in my classes? What's going to happen when I try to go out and get a job? Then of course it went to what happens when I try to ask a girl out. If I go and, because I was 14, I hadn't gone on many dates, if I say, hey, you want to go out sometime? And the girl's like, aren't you the guy that got, I'm like, nope, it's not going to happen. So thoughts like that went through my head. And it was awful, and it was sickening. And I remember getting home, and my mom just saying, you should probably head up to your room. So I went and headed up to my room, and I remember just laying on my bed and staring at the ceiling and just having those same thoughts going over and over in my head. Until my dad got home, and then they talked, and they came up to me. And I remember they didn't ground me. At least not much that I can remember, because their conversation that they had with me was, you understand that the choice you've made, grounding you is not going to change anything, because you changed your life. There's not much we can do to you now that's going to be any worse than what life is going to do to you. That you having to move forward with this decision is going to be a bigger punishment than anything we can give to you. And they were right. As we'll get to in a moment. And the fact that how disappointed that they were in me, the fact that I was not the same kid anymore in their eyes, was not easy to take and handle. But moving forward from there, one of the biggest punishments they gave me was making me go to school the next day, because I really did not want to go to school the next day. And they're like, that's part of your punishment. You are going to go there, and you are going to take whatever happens to you. And eventually I had to go in front of a judge. I remember I got to miss a day of school, and I got to wear a nice little dress tie and stuff like that, and I got to go in front of a judge. And going in front of the judge, and if you guys have ever been into Noblesville, but Noblesville has the town square that has like a building. Yeah. That building in the middle of the big clock tower, that's where I got to be judged and got to go to court in that building. That's my memory of it. So next to me, they're like, oh, my English teacher went to jail there. I didn't go to jail, it was just court, but it'd be more fun if you say it that way. And I remember having to go into that room, and not go away to the into that area, go in front of the judge, and the judge talking to me, and he was like, all right, you have good grades at school, because I was in advanced, or at least honors class, stuff like that. I had like A's and B's. And he was like, and you've never gotten in trouble with the law before. And I was like, that's right. Because apparently when you're 7 years old, you don't have a record, so I don't have to worry about that. I'm like, yeah, I'm a good kid. That's right. And so I was all excited. He's like, here's what we're going to do for you. We're going to give you what's called deferred probation. I was like, I don't know what that means. He goes, deferred probation means that as of right now, nothing bad happens to you at this moment. But the moment you do anything wrong, the moment your name comes across any police radio, and when any reason a police officer has to bring your name up, you're going to not only have to come in and get arrested, you are also going to come before me as a judge. And I am going to punish you for whatever the new thing is, and I'm going to punish you for whatever this thing was too. So you're going to get punished twice for whatever happens. Unless you can get to 18 without being arrested, then nothing happens. Once you turn 18, this gets wiped from your record like it never happens. If you get picked up, if the police even with you for any reason before then you are going to get double punishment. I'm like, I understand. That sounds really fair of you. Thank you very much, person, for not killing me. Because that's what the judge told me, which was nifty. Essentially what it meant was I couldn't get in trouble before I turned 18. If I got in trouble for anything by the time I turned 18, then I was hosed and bad things would happen. Getting arrested sucked. It was awful. But there were good things that came from it for me. One, it made me stronger. I know you hear that the things that don't kill you make you stronger, but it is true. And this strengthened me, and I came out of the experience a much stronger person than when I went into it. But the other part of it was it helped me make good choices when I was in high school. Because when you're in high school, there'll be many temptations to make poor choices as far as drugs and alcohol go. And what helped me was knowing that I couldn't make those poor choices. Because even though my friends might get let off with a warning, I wouldn't. If we were out past curfew and alcohol was involved, there was no me getting off on a warning. I was going to end up going to jail. If I was at a party and it got raided, there was no me getting off for something. I was going to go to jail. So that helped guide me and make make the right choices, not make the poor ones. The other thing that helped guide me in that same issue was my family is very messed up. I come from a long line of people who have drug and alcohol addiction. I am the only person in my family that does not have a drug and alcohol problem of one form or another. I'm one of the only people in my family who's not spent time in jail. I've been arrested multiple times, but that's pretty common in my family. But I've not spent time in jail. And I knew this growing up when I was in junior high and high school. The fact that my family came from that. They were very loving, and I love my family, but we also had deep, deep issues. And so I was paranoid when I was in junior high and high school of following in the same paths of my family, of turning out like my uncle who got arrested when I was in junior high for cocaine, or being like my grandparents who were such horrible alcoholics we couldn't take them out to eat after 4 o'clock because they got kicked out of restaurants because they were such bad drunks. And I didn't want to be like that. And so in high school, it helped guide me with my choices, the fact that I did not want to turn out like my family. And the fact that I could use this arrest helped me make the right choices oftentimes. When people were making poor choices around me, I'd be like, hey, I've been arrested once. I don't want to get arrested again. And so it helped me in that way. So I was able to see the good in it, if you will. There were some bad things from it, though. Number of one. At school, the next several days, I wish I could tell you that kids are forgiving and friendly and that they're nice, but kids aren't. Kids are horrible people. You guys spend time with them, and you fully understand that. I'm sure you see it too. Coming back to school, being called thief in the hallway as I walked down the hallway, have kids write on stuff and throw it at me when I was in class, hurt. But it was stuff that I expected. Those were things, the name calling, that would bounce off of me, and that didn't bother me as much. It was the little things that people did that they didn't do on purpose that hurt a lot more. It was walking into my English class with kids that I'd known for years that I was friends with, and seeing girls look up at me and then pack up their stuff and move it off their desk because they would pack up their pencil pouch because I would steal it, is the look they gave me. And it wasn't intentional. It wasn't a thing they were doing to bully me. It was just this thing. They looked at me, they heard that I stole stuff, and so they would pack up their things so that I wouldn't steal it. And I think that hurt and stabbed me deeper than any name calling did. The fact that I knew how people I had known for years, how it changed how they viewed me. And that hurt, and that was tough. And then there was wrestling. What happened at wrestling was also tough, because the coach was really unhappy with me, as an understatement, because he found out that day that I got arrested on the bus ride. He was taking the roll call, calling out names. When he got to my name, and he was like, Broviac, and all the kids started laughing, like, he's in jail. And coach was like, seriously, where is he? And they're like, no, he got arrested for shoplifting. We watched him get thrown into a police car. It's the best thing ever. And so they all read it out. Coaches don't like to find that out about their athletes. It makes them really unhappy. And so he expressed his unhappiness the next day at practice. And at practice the next day, he started off saying that, the choices that you make, when you make poor choices, they reflect on the whole team. And I don't like being embarrassed. So I think it's important that we fix that. So during practice that day, I weighed about 135 pounds my freshman year. I was still about half twig. He put me with our 180-pounder, who outweighed me by about 45 pounds of pure muscle, a kid by the name of Craig. And he had Craig hurt me as best he could throughout the day. It's the joy of wrestling. And basically, it's just organized child torture, which is why I love helping out the wrestling team. And so Craig, we did throws that day. It was where you lift someone up and you throw them as hard as you can. And Craig would lift me up and throw me as hard as he could. I didn't break anything, but it hurt, and I came out with bruises, and they made an impression on me. And then at the very end of practice, Coach talked to us again about the fact that he did not want to have people embarrassing his team, and he thought it was important that he got that point across. And then what Coach did was he goes, I think it's important that our seniors make this point and get it across to certain individuals. And then the coach left the room and shut the door behind him and left me in there with the rest of the team. And that's when the rest of the team came at me. And the seniors picked me up by my body and held me down. We had what's called a throwing dummy. And a throwing dummy was a 150-pound stuffed dummy that you use for throwing drills. His arms stuck out and his legs were down like that, and it was just this big stuffed fake person that was super heavy, and you'd use that to throw it. And they taped me to it. We have what's called mat tape, which holds these 1,000-pound mats together. And so they used that and taped me to this mat dummy, and then threw me around the room and just picked me up and just threw me onto my head and threw me against the wall and stuff like that until I got tired of it, and then threw me in the corner and let me sit there upside down, feet up in the air, arms out to the side, and I just hung there, thinking about my choices and how my choices had changed my life. And I was there. I had no way of seeing the time. So eventually I had friends sneak back in and cut me down. Actually, the seniors had left. They left the lights off and they snuck in with a knife and then cut me down. And so I was able to get my stuff and leave. Because if not, I would have been there till the next day. I had no idea until my mom came to find me. And so that stuck with me. And the other big memory I have from that sticks with me was a couple weeks later, we had another wrestling meet. And I did not leave during wrestling meets anymore. I stayed at school because I'm like, I'm not going to go out there again and be an idiot. So whenever we had wrestling meets, they would all go to McDonald's and the drugstore and stuff like that. But I would just go into a back hallway of the school and sit and do homework because I didn't want to do anything else. I remember one day I was sitting in this back hallway of the school doing homework when I saw this kid walking towards me, and he was a scary kid. And we had scary kids in Noblesville. We had the kids that were from like the townies, the in-town kids. And kids, this kid, particular one, was in my grade, but he had been held back a couple times. We knew that he'd gotten in trouble and suspended in the past. We thought that, well, he'd showed people a knife that he carried with him and stuff like that. He was just all hands down, just scared me. I looked up and saw him, and then he saw me and changed his direction so that he was walking towards me. And I remember just thinking, oh, I do not want this person to talk to me. So I tried like looking down at his mom, like, I don't see you, I don't see you, I don't see you. And then he walked right up to me and stood right next where I was sitting. And I remember him saying, "You Broviac?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "You the kid that got arrested for shoplifting breath spray?" That's when, "Yeah." He goes, "Hey." I looked up at him. He goes, "Kid, it gets better." I went, "What?" He goes, "Listen, when I was in 8th grade, I got arrested for shoplifting pencils. And my friends made fun of me. And it was one of the dumbest things I've ever done. And my life sucked. And it was horrible for about a month. But then people forget about it, and they move on. And the same thing's going to happen to you." He's like, "Get through these first couple of weeks, people forget about it, and they'll move on." And I just went, "Okay." And then he just walked away. One of the weirdest experiences I've ever had. But he was right. This random advice that this kid gave me in the hallway turned out to be true. And it helped me, the fact that this kid stopped to talk to me. Because within a couple weeks, something else happened at school. Some other big, important thing went from there, and I was no longer the important thing. And people ignored me, and it went back to being basically normal. If you can get through that tough part, it does go back to normal. And people forget, and people move on. And so that's what I got to experience on the second arrest. And that one helped me throughout high school to not make poor choices and to not get arrested and in trouble. Until 4 years later. Fast forward till college. So college. I'm now a freshman at IU. And as a freshman at IU, I managed to go throughout all of high school. I did not drink and I did not do drugs. I hung out with kids who drank and did drugs. Because I had friends in junior high who started drinking and doing drugs. And I stayed friends with them because they were just my friends. Even though I didn't make the same choices, I didn't want to lose them as friends. And so I'd still hang out with them at times. But I didn't do it. And they respected me and the fact that I'd been arrested and stuff like that. So I was very familiar with it, even though I didn't do it myself, and I was fine with that. And then my freshman year, when you go to IU, you don't get to bring your car with you for the most part because you have to pay a whole bunch of money to get like a parking pass, and it's not easy to do. And you live in dorms, which are like these huge apartment buildings, and they only have like these really small parking lots. And so, like the 1,000 people that live there, only 50 of them get to have a parking spot, so it's usually not worth it. But I saved up my money so I can bring my car with me to IU. And I brought my car with me to IU. And then I had to camp out to get a parking pass to be one of those 50 people. I had to probably get up at like 3 o'clock in the morning and like waiting for a concert. I had to like wait outside this front door of this building to go in and be open. The first ones to buy a parking pass. And I got my parking pass so I could park at my building and stuff like that. And things were good. And so I was one of the only kids in my floor that had a car. So I would drive people around. We had to go to the grocery or to the movies and stuff like that. I would drive them. Problem was, my car was a sports car. I had a little 2-seater Mazda RX-7, which was a nice car. Chicks dug it. That was important. But it only had 2 seats, and it was a hatchback, which a hatchback means it has like the glass back that lifts up, but you can see into it, but there's no seats back there. It's like a big flat area. So I could have friends ride with me, but it looked like you were riding in a fishbowl. Because you'd be like smashed up against the glass the entire time you were riding. It was probably dangerous and illegal, but no one died. That's pretty important. And so my friends, whenever they wanted to ride, would come see me. So November comes around, and a friend of ours on the floor, a guy by the name of Mo Simmons, his name was Mariah, we called him Mo, was going to turn 19. He had his birthday, and we wanted to throw him a party. And the guys on the floor, our dorm floor, were going to go out and get a bunch of alcohol for him. But I didn't drink still. And I didn't want to be around it, because even though I had just turned 18, I have a really late birthday, it's in May, obviously, we just had it done. But by the time I got to college, I was like, that was like 4 months ago, and I'm like, I don't want to get arrested, so, because I don't know if it got erased, I don't want to test things, so I'm like, that's fine, you guys want to have a big party here with alcohol, that's fine, I'll just give him like a present later or something like that. And my friend who was throwing the party was a guy by the name of Fish, Joshua Fisher, but we called him Fish. And Fish was like, nah, bro. He's like, we have a special request. I'm like, all right, what's up? He's like, we have a problem. I'm like, well, what can I do? I'm like, I love Mo. He's cool. I'm happy to help you out. He goes, I have a friend who's 21 who's going to buy the beer for us. And I'm like, sounds like you're good to go. He's like, nah, here's the problem. We don't have a car to go get the beer because we need to go get it so we can drive it back. And I'm like, uh-huh. He's like, can we borrow your car? And then we go get the beer and then bring it back. And I'm like, I like Mo. I want to be able to help out for the party. I didn't want to let down my friends. But at the same time, I didn't want to be an idiot to let them drive my car and have them wreck it. And then find out like, oh, your car's wrecked and they're not on your insurance. Now you never have a car again. Your parents hate you. So I'm like, that's probably not going to happen. I'm like, listen, I can't have you borrow my car. That's just stupid. And they're like, well, I'm like, how about this? I'll drive you instead. I was like, I'll drive you to the liquor store to get the beer, and then that way I make sure my car doesn't get wrecked. We get back, then you guys can just go from there. Like, all right, that works. And so it was me, Fish, my friend, and then this 21-year-old who I didn't know. And so the 21-year-old rode in the passenger seat, and then Fish smashed himself into the little back window. So Fish was in the fishbowl. It was like in that little smashed area. And so we drove around, and they brought hockey bags. If you know what a hockey bag is, it's like the bags you make for fax, but big enough to fit a person inside. Because it fits hockey equipment in there. And so they brought those. They were going to throw all the beer into those bags to carry them back up. I remember we drove around to like 3 or 4 different liquor stores, and they bought so many cases. The case is like the big thing of the case of alcohol or the case of beer. You also get a case of pops, like the big like 30, 24 pack. They bought so many of those that my car ended up like tilting in the back, and they put so many in the back. And they threw a big blanket over it, so if you looked in the back window, you couldn't see it. It had no trunk, just the back window that was all glass. Threw a blanket over it, and we're like, done. And so back there, and then Fish was all smashed up against it. And I kept getting more and more nervous as we drove around. I'm like, I don't want to be here, I don't want to be here, I don't want to be here. I'm like, I'm going to get arrested, things are going to go bad, I don't want to be arrested. So eventually I told him, like, hey, I think we have enough, car's kind of driving funny, it's all leaning backwards, like, let's go back now. And so eventually they're like, all right, we have enough. We spent all of our money. I'm like, all right, let's go. And so we drove back to the dorm. And the dorm's just a big apartment building, and then it has a parking lot out back. And I found a spot in the parking lot. There's only one spot left, and it was like the farthest one from it. I'm like, oh, of course it is. So I remember parking there, and so they popped up my little back window, and they were taking all of the cans of beer and throwing them into the big duffel bags, the hockey bags. And I'm watching them, and I'm like, I don't want to be here, I don't want to be here, I don't want to be here. So I'm like, hey, I have an idea. Why don't I go up to our dorm floor, and I'll go tell our friends so they can come down and help. And then that way they can help you pack it up. And they're like, oh, thanks. I'm like, not a problem, because it gets me away from the beer. And so I'm like, genius. Looks like I'm helping, getting away from bad stuff. So I take off to go across the parking lot. And I'm walking across the parking lot, and I get to the last row of cars where I get to go into the grass and then into the elevator to go up. And as I go across the grass, flashlights come on. and two of them pop on and shine on me. I look over to the left, and there's two people walking across the parking lot. And they go, "Hey, where are you going?" And I'm like, "Up to my dorm." They go, "What's in the car?" And the flashlights went over to the car. And when the flashlights went to the car, I saw it was two cops just walking through the parking lot, because that's how my luck is. That two cops just happen to be strolling through at that exact moment. And they shine their flashlights over on the car. But luckily, Fish and the 21-year-old had heard that, and they threw the blanket over everything in the back and then slammed my little glass trunk down, and they just sort of leaned against it. Nothing illegal going on here. They just leaned against the back of the car. And so they shined a light over there and like, "So what's in the car?" Me, being a quick thinker, said, "Car stuff." Nailed it. And they're like, "Well, why don't you come over here?" And I was like, "I don't want to." There's bad stuff over there. I'm like, "Come over here." And I'm like, "Oh, fine." So they brought me over there, and so they shined their flashlights into the back of the car, and you couldn't see anything because the blanket covered it all, but there was definitely something there that was very lumpy. And they're like, "Well, what's underneath the blanket?" And I go, "I don't know." They go, "Well, why don't you open the back and we'll find out together?" And I'm like, "No," because I've seen police shows, and I know that I don't have to open it, so I'm not going to. And he goes, "Listen, son, why don't you open the back?" And I go, "No." And he goes, "All right, there's two ways this can happen." And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Option one, you open up the back of this car, and we're going to lift up that blanket, and we're going to see what's underneath of it." And I go, "And the other option?" He goes, "The other option is, my friend and I are going to sit on the back of your trunk here so that you can't go anywhere, and we're going to call a tow truck. And the tow truck's going to come, and it's going to tow it down to the police station. At the police station, we're going to have a locksmith come out, and he's going to open the trunk for us. And then we're going to lift open that back of that blanket, and we're going to find out what's underneath there. And if there's anything illegal underneath the back of that, then we're going to come back here, and we're going to arrest you. And then you're going to have to pay for the tow truck. And then you're going to have to pay for the locksmith. Which option do you want?" So I'm sitting there going, get arrested now, get arrested later, and also have to pay a whole bunch of money. I'm like, well, both of those suck, don't they? So I opened up the trunk. And I went ahead and popped it, and it opened up in the back. And I remember, to this day, both cops lifted back the blanket at the same time, did this. Oh, Jesus. Because there was so much beer in the back of the car. And I was like, that can't be a good sound. And so they turned to look at the three of us, and we just all had that, this is going to suck look. They go, "So whose car is this?" And the 21-year-old and Fish both look at me and they go, "His car." And they look at me and they go, "Is this your car?" Swear to God, for a moment, I considered just saying no and writing off the car. Being like, "Nope, never seen it before. You can have the car, everything in it. I'm just going to go this way and be done." Then I realized my parents wouldn't like that. And my name's probably on the registration sitting on the inside. And that's not going to go well. So I said, "Yeah, that's my car." So they turned to Fish and the 21-year-old and they go, "Gentlemen, you're free to go." Because they weren't breaking the law, not their car. So they got to just walk away. Now, of course, they go, "Really?" And the cops go, "Unless you want to stay." And they go, "Nope!" And they took off running. And they looked at me and they go, "Son, you're in possession of alcohol." And I went, "Yeah." And I go, "But I don't drink." And they go, "Son, we don't care." And I'm like, "Oh, you're kidding me." Here I am. I've gone throughout all of high school, and I've gone through the first several months of college, and I've been strong, and I don't make poor choices, and I don't drink. And here I am trying to help out a friend for his birthday, and I get arrested for it. So I got handcuffs put on me again. Once again, handcuffs clicked on behind my back. They sat me down on the curb, which was next. My car was right here, and they sat me down between my car and another car. And I remember sitting on the curb, sitting there, and they sat on the back of my car, the back of it open, and they just sat there, and they were laughing and joking, having a good time. I remember just being angry and wanting to punch them and thinking how unfair life was, that I tried to be good, I tried to make good choices, and this is what happens. And the fact that I still got arrested, and the fact that I don't drink, and the fact that I'm getting arrested on alcohol charges. And I remember looking up at my dorm, which was like a 14-story building. And I lived on floor 11. I remember looking up at floor 11 and the lights being on, and all these faces being pressed against the windows, looking down at me, because once again, my friends are watching me be arrested, because what's a good arrest? That's your friends there to make fun of you. And so they were up there like waving at me and stuff like that, and we were thinking, waving with a finger. And so with the hands behind my back. And so, thanks for picking up on that one. And so, just sitting there until eventually the police car pulled up. I remember the cop car pulled up, and they pulled all the beer out of my car and put it into the back of the cop car. I don't remember how much it was. It was like about 200 some cans, a lot of cans of beer, so much.
Why so much?
And so, what?
Why so much?
It wasn't me. It was a party for someone else. Like I said, one was more than I wanted, but apparently it was enough to get me in trouble. But I don't think I cared. Between one and a whole bunch, I think I was hosed no matter what. I remember they put it all into the back of the cop car, and then I remember them putting me into the back seat of the cop car. And I remember a couple things. One, going into the back seat of it, I remember thinking, oh, not riding in the front seat this time. How about that? And then I remember it had, sitting into the seats, they were all, it was a hard plastic. It wasn't like a normal car seat. It was like your chairs, like that. That's what the whole back seat was made out of. And I found out later is because in college, a lot of times they arrest kids who are drunk. And when they're drunk, they throw up. And so their cop cars had all plastic seats, and it had a drain in the bottom of it, so they could just hose it out, which I thought was really weird at the time. So I sat there in this hard plastic. But because it was hard plastic, they had a little pocket for your hands to go in. So it had like a little bunny tail that you could pop your hands into when you sat down, which was weird. But I'll finish the very end of that story tomorrow and then get into our last talk. That's it for today!